My husband took my inheritance, built his empire, then dumped me. Unaware he made a big mistake. The memory of that day still stings like salt on an open wound. I was 22 when we met, bright-eyed, full of dreams, and naive in ways only someone who has never been truly hurt can be. He swept into my life with the charm of a man who knew exactly how to make people feel seen. His name wasn't important then, it became everything later. To me he was just Daniel, tall, handsome, ambitious, and utterly magnetic. We fell in love quickly, or at least I did. Love for him seemed more calculated, a slow seduction wrapped in promises of forever. When we married 2 years later, I handed over not just my heart but also my inheritance. It wasn't something I thought twice about. My father had passed away unexpectedly a year before our wedding, leaving behind a modest fortune built from decades of hard work in real estate. The money was meant to secure my future, but I believed Daniel when he said we'd build something together. A life. An empire. It will be ours, he whispered one night as we lay tangled in each other's arms. We'll create something extraordinary. And so, without hesitation, I signed the papers transferring the funds to his account. Together, we would conquer the world, or so I thought. At first, things were magical. Those early days hummed with possibility. Daniel worked tirelessly, pouring every ounce of energy into building what would eventually become Titan Corp, a sprawling conglomerate spanning industries from tech to hospitality. I supported him wholeheartedly, managing our home while cheering him on from the sidelines. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being his partner and became background noise. His focus shifted entirely to the business, and I found myself relegated to the role of spectator, watching as his star rose higher and higher. I told myself this was normal, that success demanded sacrifice. After all, didn't every entrepreneur need someone to hold down the fort while they chased their dreams? So I swallowed my loneliness, plastering a smile on my face whenever friends asked how things were going. Amazing, I'd say, even though the truth felt heavy in my chest. Amazing for him, maybe. For me? Not so much. But then came the betrayal. The kind that doesn't just break your heart, it shatters it into pieces too small to ever put back together. One evening, after yet another long day of waiting for him to come home, Daniel finally walked through the door. Only this time, there was no kiss, no apology for being late. Instead he stood there, his suit jacket draped over one arm, looking at me like I was nothing more than furniture. "We need to talk," he said, his voice cold and detached. He sat me down and laid it all out. Our marriage was over. He had grown beyond me, he explained, as if I were some outdated piece of technology he could discard. The company, the empire he had built using my inheritance, was thriving, and he needed someone by his side who could keep up. Someone smarter, prettier, more useful. That someone turned out to be Evelyn, a sharp-tongued executive he had hired 6 months prior. She was everything I wasn't, polished, ruthless, and completely unburdened by sentimentality. As he spoke, I felt the floor drop out from beneath me. All those years of sacrifice, of believing in him, of trusting him, it had all been for nothing. Worse still, he acted as though I should be grateful. "You gave me the foundation," he said, almost smugly. "And look where it got us. You'll always have a place in Titan Corp's history." History. As if my contribution could be reduced to a footnote in the story of his greatness. For weeks after that, I wandered through my days like a ghost. Friends tried to console me, offering platitudes about karma and second chances, but their words rang hollow. How could they understand? This wasn't just about losing a husband, it was about losing myself. Everything I had once been, hopeful, trusting, full of potential, felt dead. Gone. Buried under the weight of his betrayal. Yet amidst the pain, something unexpected began to stir within me. Anger. Hot, searing anger that refused to be ignored. It started small, like embers flickering in the ashes of my broken heart. At first, I tried to suppress it, fearing what might happen if I let it consume me. But the anger wouldn't stay quiet. It whispered truths I had been too afraid to confront, that I had allowed myself to be diminished. That I had given away my power. That I deserved better, not just from him, but from myself. One afternoon, as I sat staring blankly at the walls of the apartment I now called home, I realized something startling. Despite everything, I still had resources. Skills. Knowledge. Years spent supporting Daniel had taught me more about business than I cared to admit. I knew the inner workings of Titan Corp better than most executives because I had listened, observed, and absorbed during those countless dinners where Daniel talked shop. And though I had lost my inheritance, I hadn't lost my mind, or my determination. That realization sparked something inside me. If Daniel thought he could cast me aside and walk away unscathed, he was wrong. Dead wrong. What he failed to understand, what men like him always fail to understand, is that women are far stronger than they appear. Beneath the surface of my grief lay a reservoir of resilience I hadn't tapped into yet. And I intended to use it. The first step was reclaiming my identity. I cut off my hair, dyed it a bold shade of red, and threw out every scrap of clothing that reminded me of the woman I used to be. Symbolic gestures, perhaps, but necessary ones. Next, I reached out to old acquaintances, people who remembered me as smart, capable, and resourceful. Slowly but surely, I began piecing together a network of allies who believed in my potential. Some offered advice, others opportunities. One friend even introduced me to a venture capitalist who specialized in helping women launch startups. With their support, I started laying the groundwork for my own company. It wasn't easy. There were days when doubt crept in, whispering cruel reminders of my failures. But I pushed through, fueled by a mix of rage and resolve. I poured everything I had into creating something that was mine alone, something Daniel could never touch. My vision was simple yet powerful, to empower women who, like me, had been underestimated and overlooked. Whether it was through mentorship programs, funding initiatives, or networking events, I wanted to provide the tools and encouragement women needed to rise above adversity. Meanwhile, Daniel continued his ascent, seemingly oblivious to the storm brewing on the horizon. He paraded Evelyn around like a trophy, flaunting their relationship in interviews and social media posts. To the outside world, they were the perfect power couple, wealthy, successful, unstoppable. But cracks were beginning to show. Rumors circulated about internal strife within Titan Corp, whispers of mismanagement and declining morale. Employees complained about Evelyn's abrasive leadership style, while investors grew uneasy about Daniel's increasingly reckless decisions. Yet none of this mattered to him, not yet anyway. He remained convinced that he was untouchable, invincible. What he didn't realize was that I had access to information he assumed was safe. Years of listening to his conversations, reading his emails, and attending meetings had given me insights into Titan Corp's operations that no outsider possessed. Insights that, if leveraged correctly, could bring his empire crashing down. Of course, revenge wasn't my ultimate goal. Destroying him wouldn't heal the wounds he had inflicted or restore the years I had lost. But exposing the truth? That was non-negotiable. So I bided my time, gathering evidence and building alliances. Every move I made was deliberate, calculated. I attended industry conferences, mingled with journalists, and cultivated relationships with key players in the business world. Slowly but surely, I positioned myself as a force to be reckoned with, a woman who couldn't be ignored. And all the while, Daniel remained blissfully unaware of the threat looming in the shadows. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. A whistleblower from Titan Corp contacted me, desperate to expose the corruption festering within the company. They provided documents detailing illegal practices, falsified financial reports, and unethical deals struck with shady partners. It was everything I needed, and more. Armed with this ammunition, I approached a prominent investigative journalist known for taking down corporate giants. Together, we crafted a plan to unveil the truth in a way that would leave Titan Corp and Daniel reeling. The article hit newsstands on a Monday morning, splashed across the front page of every major publication. By noon, social media was ablaze with outrage. Investors panicked, pulling their money out of Titan Corp en masse. Employees staged protests, demanding accountability. And Daniel? He went silent, retreating into damage control mode as the world watched his carefully constructed facade crumble. Watching it unfold from afar, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Satisfaction, yes, but also sadness. Because despite everything, part of me still mourned the man I once loved. The man who had promised me the world and left me with nothing but scars. Yet even as I grappled with these conflicting feelings, I knew one thing for certain: Daniel had made a grave mistake. Underestimating me wasn't just arrogant, it was fatal. Now, standing on the precipice of a new chapter, I find myself reflecting on the journey that brought me here. From the ashes of betrayal, I have risen stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. My company is thriving, my mission gaining traction, and my spirit unbreakable. But the story isn't over, not yet. There are still battles to fight, victories to claim, and lessons to learn. And as I look toward the future, I do so with clarity and purpose. Because Daniel may have taken my inheritance, but he gave me something far more valuable in return, the fire to forge my own path. The fire Daniel unwittingly ignited within me burned brighter with each passing day. It wasn't just about dismantling Titan Corp or exposing his deceit anymore, it was about proving something to myself. I wanted to show him, and the world, that I was more than the woman he had discarded. That betrayal, no matter how devastating, could be transformed into fuel for greatness. As the fallout from the exposé continued to ripple through the business community, I found myself at the center of attention in ways I hadn't anticipated. Journalists clamored for interviews, eager to paint me as either a victim-turned-victor or a cunning mastermind orchestrating revenge. Neither label fit entirely, but I let them write their stories because it served my purpose, keeping the spotlight on Titan Corp's corruption while elevating my own platform. The irony wasn't lost on me. Daniel's empire was crumbling under the weight of his hubris, and I was stepping into the void he left behind. But building an empire of my own wasn't without its challenges. My company, Phoenix Rising, aimed to empower women entrepreneurs by providing funding, mentorship, and resources. It was ambitious, perhaps overly so, given the scale of what I envisioned. Yet every time doubt crept in, I reminded myself of the countless women who had been silenced, sidelined, or stepped over by men like Daniel. Their stories fueled my determination. If I could help even one woman rise above her circumstances, then all the sleepless nights and endless sacrifices would be worth it. One such woman walked into my office on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Her name was Clara, and she carried herself with a quiet strength that immediately drew me in. She was in her mid-30s, dressed simply but impeccably, her dark hair pulled back into a neat bun. Her eyes, though weary, held a spark of defiance. Clara had founded a sustainable fashion startup years ago, pouring her savings and soul into creating ethically sourced clothing. But when her male co-founder betrayed her, much like Daniel had done to me, and took control of the company, she was left with nothing but debt and shattered dreams. "I read about you," Clara said after we exchanged pleasantries. "About everything you've been through. And I thought, maybe you'd understand." Her voice trembled slightly, but there was steel beneath the vulnerability. "I don't want to give up. Not yet." Her words struck a chord deep within me. In that moment, I saw myself reflected in her, a woman beaten down by life but unwilling to surrender. I offered her not only financial backing but also guidance and connections to help relaunch her brand. Over the following months, Clara became a symbol of resilience within Phoenix Rising. Her journey inspired others, and soon, applications poured in from women across industries seeking support. Each story was unique, yet they shared a common thread, the desire to reclaim their power. Meanwhile, Daniel's decline accelerated. Lawsuits piled up against Titan Corp, filed by disgruntled investors and former employees alike. Evelyn, once his golden ticket, distanced herself publicly, issuing statements condemning his actions while positioning herself as a reformer. Their carefully curated image as a power couple dissolved into acrimony, leaving both of them isolated. Rumors swirled that Daniel was struggling with substance abuse, though he vehemently denied it in rare public appearances. He looked gaunt, haunted, a shadow of the charismatic man who had once swept me off my feet. Despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to gloat. Watching him unravel stirred complicated emotions within me. There were moments of vindication, yes, but also pity. I remember the early days of our marriage, when his ambition felt like a shared dream rather than a weapon used against me. Those memories were bittersweet, tinged with nostalgia and regret. Had things turned out differently, if he hadn't chosen greed and ego over love, could we have built something beautiful together? The question lingered unanswered, a reminder of roads not taken. Still, I refused to let sentimentality cloud my focus. While Daniel floundered, Phoenix Rising flourished. We launched initiatives addressing gender inequality in corporate boardrooms, partnered with schools to encourage girls to pursue careers in STEM fields, and created safe spaces for women to share their experiences without fear of judgment. What started as a personal mission evolved into a movement, gaining momentum with each success story. Yet amidst the triumphs, there were reminders of the cost of this fight. Late one evening, as I sat alone in my office reviewing quarterly reports, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. My stomach tightened as I opened it. The text contained a single photograph, a grainy image of me leaving a cafe earlier that day. Beneath it, 2 chilling words, "Stop digging." Fear prickled along my spine, but I quickly masked it with anger. Who did they think they were, trying to intimidate me? This wasn't the first threat I'd received since taking on Titan Corp, nor would it be the last. I forwarded the message to my security team, who assured me they would investigate, but the incident left me uneasy. Someone out there didn't want me to keep pushing forward, and they were willing to go to great lengths to stop me. That night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I realized something important. Fear is a natural response to danger, but it doesn't have to dictate your actions. Every battle worth fighting comes with risks, and I had made peace with mine long ago. If anything, the threats only strengthened my resolve. They reminded me why I started this journey in the first place, to create a world where no woman has to endure what I did. A world where power isn't wielded as a weapon but shared as a gift. Determined to press on, I threw myself into expanding Phoenix Rising's reach. One of our most ambitious projects involved acquiring a struggling tech company and restructuring it to prioritize diversity and inclusion. The acquisition process was grueling, requiring negotiations with stakeholders who viewed me with skepticism bordering on hostility. But I refused to back down, leveraging every ounce of perseverance and strategy one possessed. When the deal finally closed, it marked a turning point, not just for Phoenix Rising, but for the industry as a whole. For the first time, people began to see me not as Daniel's ex-wife or the woman who exposed Titan Corp, but as a leader in my own right. And then came the invitation that changed everything. It arrived via email one crisp autumn morning, bearing the logo of the Global Economic Forum. They wanted me to deliver a keynote speech at their annual summit, addressing the intersection of ethics, leadership, and gender equality in business. At first, I hesitated. Public speaking had never been my forte, and the idea of standing before thousands of influential figures filled me with trepidation. But deep down, I knew this was an opportunity one couldn't pass up. If I truly wanted to make a difference, I needed to step out of the shadows and into the light. Preparation consumed the weeks leading up to the event. I pored over notes, rehearsed tirelessly, and sought feedback from trusted mentors. On the day of the speech, nerves threatened to overwhelm me as I stood backstage, listening to the hum of anticipation from the crowd. Then, as I stepped onto the stage, a strange calm washed over me. Looking out at the sea of faces, I saw reflections of my past selves, young women full of hope, seasoned professionals seeking change, survivors determined to rebuild. Their presence steadied me, grounding me in the purpose of my words. My husband took my inheritance, built his empire, then dumped me, I began, my voice steady despite the weight of the admission. A ripple of murmurs spread through the audience, but I pressed on. He thought he was untouchable. He thought I was powerless. He made a big mistake. The room fell silent as I recounted my story, not just the pain, but the lessons learned and the victories won. I spoke of resilience, of finding strength in adversity, and of using privilege to uplift others. By the time I concluded, the applause was thunderous, echoing through the vast hall like a tidal wave. Tears pricked my eyes as I scanned the crowd, seeing nods of understanding and flashes of inspiration. In that moment, I knew I had accomplished something extraordinary. But as I descended from the stage, shaking hands and accepting congratulations, a familiar face appeared in the periphery. Daniel. He looked older, wearier, his once commanding presence diminished. Our eyes met briefly, and for a split second, I saw something unexpected in his gaze, regret. Or perhaps it was merely wishful thinking on my part. Either way, I didn't approach him. Some chapters remain closed for good reason. In the weeks that followed, the impact of the speech reverberated globally. Media outlets hailed me as a trailblazer, and invitations flooded in from organizations eager to collaborate. Yet amidst the accolades, I remained grounded. Success wasn't measured by titles or awards, it was measured by lives touched and futures transformed. And as Phoenix Rising continued to grow, so too did my belief in the limitless potential of those who dared to rise above. But life has a way of reminding us that no victory is final. Just as I began to settle into a rhythm of stability and progress, a new challenge emerged, one that would test everything I had fought for. An anonymous buyer had entered the market, quietly acquiring shares in several companies tied to Phoenix Rising. Their intentions were unclear, but the implications were ominous. Whoever they weren't acting alone. A storm was brewing once again, and this time, I wasn't sure if I had the strength to weather it. The anonymous buyer's moves were calculated, methodical. They began acquiring stakes in companies tied to Phoenix Rising, not enough to trigger alarm bells initially, but significant enough to disrupt our operations when the pattern became clear. At first, I dismissed it as typical corporate maneuvering. After all, success invites competition, and I had learned to expect challenges along the way. But as the acquisitions escalated, so did my unease. This wasn't just about market share or strategic positioning. Someone was targeting me personally, aiming to dismantle everything I had built. Late one night, after another grueling day of meetings with my legal team, I sat alone in my office staring at the city lights beyond my window. The skyline glittered like a promise of endless possibilities, yet tonight it felt hollow. Each flicker seemed to mock me, a reminder of how fragile even the brightest achievements could be. My mind raced with questions. Who was behind this? What did they want? And why now, when momentum was finally on my side? Then came the letter, a plain white envelope slipped under my office door while I worked late. Inside was a single sheet of paper bearing 3 words scrawled in bold, jagged handwriting, "You're not done." My heart pounded as I turned the page over, searching for some clue, some signature that might reveal the sender's identity. There was nothing. Just those 3 chilling words, heavy with implication. For a moment, panic threatened to take hold. Was this another warning? A taunt? Or worse, a declaration of war? But instead of letting fear consume me, I chose to channel it into action. If someone wanted to play games, I would meet them head-on. With the help of my security team, we traced the origin of the letter to a courier service hired by an untraceable client. Dead end. Undeterred, I doubled down on fortifying Phoenix Rising. We implemented stricter protocols, severed ties with questionable partners, and fortified our financial defenses. Every move was deliberate, every decision aimed at ensuring the survival of what I had created. Yet despite these efforts, the attacks persisted. Share prices fluctuated wildly, suppliers mysteriously backed out of contracts, and key employees received lucrative offers from rival firms. It was as if an invisible hand was pulling strings, orchestrating chaos from the shadows. The pressure mounted, threatening to crush me under its weight. Sleep became elusive, replaced by restless nights spent strategizing and second-guessing every decision. And then, just as despair began to creep in, I received an unexpected call. It was Clara, the woman whose sustainable fashion startup I had helped revive months earlier. Her voice trembled with urgency as she explained that she had uncovered something during her research for a new collection. A name kept surfacing in connection with the companies targeting Phoenix Rising, Evelyn. Evelyn. Daniel's former protégé and lover. The woman who had once stood beside him, basking in the glow of his empire. My stomach churned as the pieces fell into place. She hadn't distanced herself from Daniel out of principle, she had been plotting her own rise to power. Using the remnants of Titan Corp's influence and resources, she had assembled a coalition of investors eager to see Phoenix Rising fail. Why? Revenge, perhaps, or maybe envy. Either way, she saw me as a threat, and she intended to eliminate me. Armed with this knowledge, I devised a plan. Rather than confront Evelyn directly, I decided to expose her machinations publicly. Working closely with trusted allies, we gathered evidence linking her to the hostile takeover attempts. Documents, emails, financial transactions, all pointed to her involvement. When the information was ready, I leaked it to a journalist known for exposing corporate corruption. Within hours, the story broke, igniting a firestorm of outrage. Evelyn's carefully constructed facade crumbled under the scrutiny. Investors fled, lawsuits piled up, and her reputation lay in ruins. Watching her downfall unfold, I felt no sense of triumph, only relief. She had underestimated me, just as Daniel had. And like him, she had made a fatal mistake. With Evelyn neutralized, Phoenix Rising slowly regained its footing. The attack ceased, allowing us to focus once again on our mission. Yet the experience left an indelible mark on me. I realized that success isn't a destination, it's a constant battle against forces that seek to tear you down. Resilience isn't about never falling, it's about rising each time you do. As the dust settled, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. From the ashes of betrayal, I had forged not only a company but also a legacy. Women who had once felt powerless now stood tall, their voices amplified by the platform I had created. Together, we were rewriting the rules of a world designed to exclude us. One evening, as I walked through the bustling headquarters of Phoenix Rising, I paused to watch a group of young women brainstorming ideas for a new initiative. Their laughter filled the air, mingling with the hum of creativity and ambition. In that moment, I knew I had succeeded, not because of accolades or wealth, but because I had sparked change that would outlast me. Later that night, as I sat alone in my apartment sipping tea, I allowed myself a rare moment of introspection. The scars of my past remained, etched into my soul like lines on a map. But they no longer defined me. Instead, they served as reminders of how far I had come, and how much further I could go. There was still work to be done, battles to fight, lives to transform. But for the first time in years, I felt at peace. Not because I had vanquished every enemy or secured my place in history, but because I had reclaimed my power. I had taken the pain inflicted upon me and turned it into purpose. And as I drifted off to sleep, I smiled knowing one truth above all others. Daniel thought he had destroyed me when he took my inheritance and walked away. But in doing so, he had unknowingly set me free.